Um, okay, wonderful. So thank you guys so much for coming to our first workshop or lecture in a series of lectures on phonological awareness for interpreters, because as I started preparing this, I realized this is a huge topic that I would like to really address slowly and piece by piece. So today we are going to really go back to the most basic fundamental foundations of the discipline of phonetics and phonology. We're going to talk about the International Phonetic Alphabet, understand where sounds come from, what sound is, and then next week, same time, we will do things that are a little bit more practical, and we will increase the level of practicality and complexity until I feel like I have exhausted everything there is to say about the topic, and I have exhausted my professional curiosity, both as an interpreter and as a lecturer, which I guess is a hat I am metaphorically wearing today. And I honestly love this hat. It keeps my head very warm. So, I'm going to share my screen. If you have any questions at any point, there is going to be a lot of material today. You can raise your hand and ask using your voice, and hopefully by the end of this lecture, you will understand a little bit better into what goes into that in terms of what you'll understand a bit better what goes into that process of asking a question, or if you can also send a message into the chat. Both are okay. Okay. So, without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. And today we're going to be talking about phonological awareness for interpreters, and we're going to be talking about sounds. For some reason, it doesn't like when I share full screen slides, but well, who am I to judge? Okay. So again, we're going to talk about phonetics, phonology, the difference between the two, and the history of these two disciplines. We're going to talk sounds, where they're made and how they're made. And then, if we have time, we will discuss the practical application of this knowledge and the implication of knowing or not knowing this. So, allow me to ask you, what is the difference between phonetics and phonology? Does anybody know? No is also a fantastic answer. Nobody knows, I feel like give you a bit more. If somebody does know, feel free to share this knowledge with the rest. Erika?
I'm not sure I'd be able to say what the difference is, but I can say that phonetics is in phonetics you have the knowledge about sounds and
Mm-hmm.
how, yes, and you also have the phonetical alphabet, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yes.
phonology, yes, and then phonology is I don't know. I'm not
Yes.
sure.
So
I'm
you
not sure.
get perfect. So you did get the first study answer, right? So
Good.
phonetics is the study of sound, right?
Yeah.
It is just the study of literally the frequency of sound. There are three main kinds of phonetics. Articulatory phonetics, which asks where is sound in the body? How is sound produced in the body? Acoustic phonetics, which marks and maps sound as a frequency, as a vibration, like they'd say in Bali or wherever else of those hippie places are going on. They'd even bring it to vibration, right? And there's also auditory phonetics, which looks at the other side of the listener, how it is perceived, right? But phonetics is very much a physical kind of discipline, very much physical. Phonology, on the other hand, looks at how we take these sounds and we map them on to languages, right? So, for example, in Ukrainian and European languages, there is a difference between L and R. But in Japanese and Chinese, it's somewhere in between, right? Which is why often people from these regions have difficulty pronouncing phrases, and this is again the stereotype, have difficulty pronouncing phrases such as fried rice, instead saying, yes, we have a message, laterals. Laterals? What are laterals?
So do you call R and L laterals in
Do
English?
we? They are laterals. Well, there
Yeah,
you go.
yeah,
They're laterals. Perfect.
yeah.
Oh,
Good.
yeah, so they have
White
difficulty
lies.
pronouncing them, right? Flight lice, exactly. Or sometimes Ukrainian people will say You are, cannot tell the difference between sheet and the other word, or beach and the other word, because e and it are also the same. They kind of map in a very similar way. Good. So we're going to talk about
I
this.
know,
And the
I know
history. Yes.
that
Yes.
in
Go ahead.
Korean, for instance, I know for a fact that in Korean they don't distinguish between the sounds p and f.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work for
Mm-hmm.
Samsung Electronics, and I came across a lot of terms like in logistics. Just imagine how they would pronounce something like a packing list or a backup
What?
file. Yeah, we were getting a lot of laughs.
Yeah. Yes. So I also listened to a podcast a few days ago, from also a friend of mine in Berlin, and where she said that kids understand the difference between P and B very, very late or relatively late, right? So sometimes when a child is saying papa or baba, they might actually want to say baba, but they end up saying papa and vice versa, right? It's just, again, and some languages like I think Arabic doesn't really make a difference between P and B. It's the same. Yeah. So if you listen to people talk with an Egyptian accent, they will often say b instead of p, and so on and so forth. Right. And the history of phonetics actually comes from India. The name of this scientist was Panini, and now it's also a sandwich, but this is an actual human being. And he was the greatest linguist of antiquity and deserves to be treated as such. Yes, Spanish also, right? P and B and V and B. Yeah, vale. Yeah, sometimes they say vale. It's all the same, right?
B
Yeah,
de vaca, B
exactly.
de Barcelona.
Sorry, what?
They call it in Spanish B de vaca, B de Barcelona. The distinction
What does
between the
that
two
mean?
sounds is because uh, the B in Barcelona is the B letter. And
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
vaca, which means cow, it is the V. So that's how they
Yeah,
distinguish B de
exactly.
vaca, the B in vaca, and B de Barcelona, and B in Barcelona.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So this is not what we're talking about today. They were just talking about phonetics, which is the story of sound. And I want to show you these two pictures of these two men, and the name of one of these men will what did he do? What was one thing he was famous for? Sorry, my Alexander Graham Bell. What was he famous for? Rika?
Telephone.
The
He invented the
telephone.
telephone, yes.
The
A
telephone. Exactly.
different one that we
Uh,
have today, not definitely not a cell phone, but
the
yes,
telephone.
telephone. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And do you know why? What he was trying to do, actually? What was his idea? So it's a really fascinating story. Okay. So his father, Alexander Melville Bell, created this thing called visible speech, which is kind of the precursor to the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet we all use today. And the reason he did it, why would he do it? So I know that we study phonetics as an abstract discipline. Like for us, we are nerdy. We choose to spend our Wednesday evening listening to a lecture on phonetics, but most people aren't really like this. So what would be the practical application of categorizing sounds? Why would you need to create separate symbols for sounds? What would be the logic? What's the objective here? What would be the benefit of doing that? Yes.
Maybe
But
teaching somebody who doesn't maybe somebody who's blind who needs to learn another language, or that cannot no
exactly.
knows or cannot read could also be.
Exactly, but
Yeah.
having symbols for somebody who's blind is kind of
Yeah, yeah.
useless because they cannot
I
see
know.
it.
eh,
However, having symbols for somebody who is
Dyslexical or uh,
dyslexic, yes, or
yeah.
somebody who cannot hear. What do we call somebody who doesn't hear?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Deaf.
Who's deaf?
I would say
Sorry?
that in so many languages, basically how the language is written can be wildly different from
Mm-hmm.
how it is pronounced. Like
Mm-hmm.
take French, for example.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. So, and indeed, in the English language, there were several attempts to standardize English spelling through the use of alternative spelling systems. The most famous one must have been probably the Shavian alphabet sponsored by John Bernard Shaw. He left a lot of money to develop a better alphabet. Unfortunately, it did not catch on. And now with AI and spell check, it's never going to catch on. And I think we're left with this horrible spelling system forever and ever and ever until we can come up with a better medium altogether. That said, Alexander Melville Bell was fascinated with the idea of teaching deaf people how to read, right? And he created this kind of visible speech thing. And so the idea was really to teach people how to read. And back in the day, they had this idea of oralism. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it was a pretty dark chapter in our history where the assumption was that deaf people should be taught to speak and should not be taught sign language. Alexander Graham Bell was a eugenicist, and a eugenicist is, well, it's a very Vadim, what did eugenicists believe?
Look, I don't think I'm ready to produce a, a dictionary definition, but this research was being done around. Well, look, I'm afraid I will now confuse it with something
Okay.
totally different.
Okay.
So
So exactly. So as Eric and
yeah,
Susan say, eugenicism is race
race
theory
race
at
theory.
its I mean, I guess there's not really race theory at its best, but there's I guess it's all at its worst. I don't know. But it was like a bad kind of discipline where they believed that kind of selective breeding of humanity led to kind of racially some bullshit. But basically Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone, his wife was deaf. And the reason he invented the telephone was because he originally wanted a device that would produce human speech that deaf people could use. That was his OG ambition. Like in general, he was really fascinated with deafness and the deaf community. And however, at the same time, even though his wife was deaf, he believed that deaf people would form a deaf race. And at that time, in the late 19th century, up until I don't know when, deaf people were actively discouraged from communicating with each other, discouraged from learning sign language, and discouraged from. Even though 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents, and vice versa, most deaf couples have kids with no hearing impairments. But Alexander Graham Bell did not know this. That said, this is kind of how we started getting the IPA, and this is how we got the telephone.
Is it me or does Misha keep freezing every once in a while?
Beer, I
Yes,
don't really drink beer. I just
it
bought it because I
happens to
like
me too.
using I like using prompts. So I keep freezing, yeah? I'm
Yes.
really sorry about that. Oh, hold on. Let me turn off my VPN. I'm on a VPN. Probably why. Okay, is this better?
We'll see how it
Is
goes.
this better? Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, I'm
It's
sorry
better
about that.
now until you freeze again.
Okay, well, let me know. Let me know. My internet has been kind of unstable lately. Anyway, yeah, so this is also an IPA, an Indian Pale Ale. I don't really like beer, but I do love props. So I bought this just to show you that this is the most linguistic beer you could ever drink. Who here has seen this chart at least once? You have never, who here has never seen this chart? Sophie, you've never seen this. Vadim has never seen it.
I've
Okay.
seen the symbols, the phonetic symbols, but I don't think
Yeah?
they were in a chart organized like that. No, I
Okay.
don't. But
Okay.
I've
Okay.
only I've only seen parts of it.
Okay.
In
Okay. Yeah.
particular, this vowel pyramid or whatever
Mm-hmm.
the shape is.
Oh,
Yeah.
we'll talk about that as well. Yeah. So this is the International Phonetic Alphabet. Ideally, by the end of this session, you should be able to read it, sort of, or understand it, or understand where it comes from, at least in theory. Okay. And basically, this maps all the sounds in all human languages. It keeps being revised, but the assumption is if it's not on here, it doesn't really exist. And there's the consonants part, right? There's the vowels part. And then there's other symbols, there's diacritics, there's enough information to describe pretty much any language on the planet because every single language has consonants and vowels. There's no language that does not have it. Okay. Also, if you ever want to teach English or you're interested in a more kind of basic human version of this, I highly recommend Adrian Underhill's pronunciation chart and his book Sound Foundations, Learning and Teaching Pronunciation. He's got a 1 hour long lecture on YouTube where he really guides you through English sounds. He really shows you how everything is pronounced very well, very interactively. We're not going to do that today, but in case you're curious, I highly, 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 highly recommend on Adrian Underhill, both as a good way of teaching others and understanding the language that we speak. And again, this is the version of the chart he uses, much simpler. Okay. So, what is sound? Sound is essentially a frequency, right? This is a spectrogram of the word spend. Yeah. And here we can see the s, yeah, which is a fricative, and then which is a sibilant. We can see the p. This is what sound? I can't hear you.
What was it?
Right. So this is the right? You can see the frequency,
Okay.
the yeah, yeah. And this is the n, again, also a bit louder, and then the d, spent, spent. That's it. So lots of linguists work with spectrograms. There's apps you can download. You can analyze sound as a frequency because it is ultimately a frequency. It is what it is. And now we're going to find out about what makes it a frequency. So where does our air come from? Where does air live?
In the lungs?
In the lungs, exactly. And then it comes up. Yeah, where does it go after it comes up?
Into the throat.
Into the throat. And then it goes through this really nifty thing. You can touch it here if you want. You can go, and you can feel this little bit of cartilage here. It's kind of flexible, yeah, around the men have an Adam's apple. And this is called the larynx, also known as the voice box. This is where the magic starts happening. So until sound comes here, it's just air. It's all just air, up, yeah, two. But then when it comes here, this is where sound starts occurring. And basically this larynx, the voice box, is a collection of different cartilages, right? The one in the front of it is called the thyroid cartilage. The word thyroid should be familiar to some of you from another context. When do we talk about thyroids?
Sadly, when we speak about thyroid cancer.
Yes, exactly. Cancer. What else?
And when we speak about hormones,
Hormones. Exactly. Right? Good. Good. Do you know what the word thyroid actually means originally? What the word thyroid means?
The oid means it's similar to something else, but what they
Good. 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 Similar to what? How do you say thyroid in Ukrainian or?
Oh yeah, it's
Okay.
the shield. Well, what is it?
So in Ukrainian,
Shield-like
shield
gland.
like
Good.
Gland.
Is it this?
Yeah.
Is it the same in Danish and French?
Yes, it is. It's called a skjoldbruskkirtel. So kirtel is gland. Yes, and yeah.
Okay.
It is
Skill is shield, right? Okay.
Skjold.
It is thyroid in French. So
Oh,
just
okay.
like in
So
English.
I guess it's Latin or Greek. That would make sense. Yeah, I guess there's really, yeah. So we have the thyroid cartilage, and then we have the cricoid cartilage. That means ring or something, part of the ring. And this is where the vocal folds are attached, right? So they're attached right here to these, yes, Schilddrüse. Yeah, yeah, it's all shit, not sheet. Or which one? One of those two. Shit. Shit. Anyway, so this is where the vocal cords are. It's kind of where the magic happens. And so they're attached to this cartilage, and then they kind of, by definition, they're closed, right? The muscles, they're always closed. These muscles close them. And basically what happens then is so they're like this, right? And then air, it's called an aggressive, not aggressive, aggressive with any pulmonary movement, pushes the air out, pushes the air out and moves the vocal and forces the vocal cords to open like this, right? It goes up and then it closes. And then again, the air goes up, opens it, and then it closes. And it opens it and it closes. And how often do you think it does this? In 1 second, how often do you think your vocal cords open and close?
Every 5 times a second when we speak.
Okay, we have 5 times a second. Any other numbers?
I think it should vary with the pitch.
It does vary with pitch, good. But for a man, for example.
I think it's about 40, but I really
40, okay. We
not
can go
being
higher.
dictionary here.
We
Okay.
can go higher. So for men, it's about 100 to 120 times a second. For women, it's about 200 to 240 times a second. And for kids, because they're very, very, very high pitched, it can go up to 300 times a second, right? This is what we call our fundamental frequency, which is kind of the average frequency at which we talk. 100 hertz, 120 hertz. For men, 200, 240. For women, and then as we speak, and you can start noticing this in my speech, you can start noticing the pitch. I've become aware of my pitch. Suddenly it's dropped. So, so, so it goes up and down. But on average, about 100, 120 for men, 200, every single second. Okay. Is this clear? Okay. So just to reiterate, basically, we don't really open or close the vocal cords voluntarily. The air gets pushed out through the lungs with our muscles, and this forces them to open, and then they naturally close and open and close. And for example, if you sing and go, ah, you can sort of feel like this, it comes and goes. It go, ah, and go. It's not just one long sound, it's flickers in a way, right? Okay. So let's do some exercises. Rest your fingers lightly against the front of your neck and think of what you can feel when you perform the following activities. Open your mouth and sigh, making a sort of sound. Okay. Say a long, they say a long, slow ah.
Ah.
Mhm. Ah. Say shh, and then imitate the sound of a snake, making a long, drawn out S sound. Shh. Shh. And now let's try to imitate the sound of a bee, making a long, drawn out Z sound. Zzz. Okay. Okay. And now can we go s, z, s, z, s, z. Do we notice any difference between s and z? What is the difference? Yes. Vibration? Exactly. Good. So when your vocal cords vibrate, we call the sound voiced or unvoiced? Or voiceless, sorry. Voiced or voiceless?
Voiced.
Voiced, right? When the vocal cords, right? When they don't, right? So is it voiced or voiceless?
Voiceless.
Voiceless, right? Because there's no vibration. Exactly. It's kind of good. They call it a voiceless vowel, paradoxically, because there's really no friction. Okay. Good. All right. Now I'm going to explain this little chart to you. You've seen this chart before. Can you raise your hand if this chart makes sense to you, if it's intuitive? Okay, Irina, yes, Vadim, good. It's intuitive. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. For me, it was not particularly intuitive, so I'm going to explain to you how we got to this chart, okay? Because I have seen this chart 1,000 times. I never really understood it. I can use it, but I've never used it. Okay, so we need to thank this guy. His name is Daniel Jones. He was a phonetician, also considered the first phonologist. He created the term phoneme. It was also the basis for Professor Henry Higgins in Pygmalion, or the movie version of it, which was called
Lady.
My Fair Lady. Exactly right. So he was like a really good guy. And he encountered a problem, right? Because it is very, very easy for us to describe consonants, right? Consonants are simple. Consonants, it's all about obstruction. We can explain that a t is when you move your tongue to your palate. You can feel a consonant, right? Super easy. But vowels are significantly more difficult to feel because vowels are produced with no obstruction. Ah, oh, ooh. They're not really anywhere. There's no experience of the ah. You can't put your finger on where the ah is. You can't really objectively describe it through anything physical. You can sort of describe what you're doing, but the ah itself happens, it's hard. So he was like, you know what we're going to do? We are going to describe the limits of what is possible. In other words, he created 8 cardinal vowels, which is basically as close you can go, as high you can go as a vowel before there is friction. So if you look at the roof of your mouth, the hard palate, can we go yit, yit, like
Yep.
yet, yet. So yet sounds kind of like a consonant, but it's still a vowel. There's friction. So you need to go a little bit lower than that, and you get the first cardinal vowel. What is it?
E.
E. Exactly. It's the first cardinal vowel, CV1. It goes E. This is as high as you can go in the vowel world before you become a consonant. And then we have a second lecture, second vowel. If you go as back, if you move the center of your tongue as far back as possible, what do you get? When you open your
No.
mouth and move, yes, no, no, as far back, as low and as far back as possible. Oh, exactly.
Okay.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So physically, anything further than that, you get a glottal stop. Anything, you just get the sound. You get a stop, like in walk. Oh, it just stops. There's nothing. So he devised this kind of system between the E, the oo. Okay, wonderful, Sophie. What are you showing us? We can't hear you.
It is a dictionary by Daniel Jones. I think it's the same one.
Mm. Maybe, but he died in 1967.
Yes, but it's the
That's,
15th
oh my
edition.
God.
So
We have a celebrity in our midst. Well, this is wonderful synchronicity.
yeah. I just remember that when I saw his name, I thought this is the book I had to buy in college some 20 something years ago, and I
Fantastic.
still
Yes,
have it.
that would make sense. I would, oh my God, this is incredible. Thank you for showing it. This is
Yes, it
delightful.
will. It
Exactly.
will have seen so many editions, I think. So this is probably one of the more modern
Oh,
ones.
wow. Isn't this incredible? Do you feel like part of it? You're part of history? Like,
I remember a very old edition, maybe. Well, not. Well, maybe printed in the 1950s or something.
hmm
Yellow pages, and all
Yeah.
that. So it's,
So
I understand it.
you see,
Yeah.
exactly. Good. Right. And so what he did basically is he looked at these cardinal vowels, right? And then he also looked at them and he said, okay, that's not really enough to describe everything we're doing. So he added 8 more secondary cardinal vowels by taking the variable of rounding, right? So rounding a rounded vowel is when your lips are round, like a o, oo, and O, U, and then an A is also rounded, but an E and an E, yeah, and then A, they're unrounded. So if you look here, you see that E is rounded, U, U, E, U, unrounded, yeah, E, rounded, and this is yes, it's quite Danish, unrounded, right? So this is the entire vowel chart, basically. And then we can describe all vowels using three criteria. Backness, so how far back is the active part of the tongue? Yeah, yeah. Openness, how near to the palate, so the roof of your mouth, is the active part of your tongue? And rounding, are the lips spread, neutral, or rounded? Okay, that's really it. So I'm going to give you a sound, and I'm going to ask you to describe it, right? What kind of sound is ah? So in terms, is it front or is it back?
It's a back one.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Ah,
Okay. Is it open or is it closed?
It's open.
Open.
Open. Okay, good. And is it rounded or unrounded? Ah,
Unrounded.
ah. Exactly. Good. What about an E? Is it front or back?
E.
E.
Front.
Front. Okay, good. Open or closed?
Mm.
E.
Closed.
Right, close. You're close. E. E. Very close.
E.
Exactly. And is it rounded or unrounded? Unrounded, right? Of course. Good. This is right. These three parameters are basically enough, right? This is, you can describe pretty much, as far as I understand, this is really enough, right? If you're, I'm going to open this to the floor right now, and I'm going to ask in your languages, are there any sounds for speakers of your language and learners of English that are difficult to reproduce in English? So I know for Ukrainian that there are certain English sounds that are problematic for Ukrainian speakers, but I'm going to, drink some water. In other languages, are there any sounds that are problematic for speakers of your languages?
Maybe the French U.
No, other way around. So for French people, any sounds in English that are problematic. Or we can
Ah.
look at the U. Yeah, we can look at the U. Mhm.
Or the opposite, it would be the TH sound.
Okay, okay, but what about vowels? Any vowels?
Like in Ukrainian, I think it's E, but I don't know really. I can when I explain my name,
Mm-hmm.
my name like has E in it.
Mm-hmm.
So people just mix it with E or E.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's why it's problematic. But I don't know if
Exactly,
it's
because an U is it's not quite an E. It's not as high up as the E, right? And it's not as
Mhm.
front as the E. It's a bit back. U. So you go a little bit U.
I think Misha is asking about the other way around. So it's like what
Oh, sorry.
people speaking other
Misunderstood.
languages.
No.
Like if we take
Mm-hmm.
English for a Ukrainian speaker, well,
Mm-hmm.
like if we're speaking about vowels,
Mm-hmm.
I think that the very simple sound
Mm-hmm.
is what so many Slavic speakers really struggle with.
Like the
So
schwa, right?
the schwa and the
Uh,
sound, as you found
yeah.
in words like
Uh-huh.
bird, and the
Uh-huh.
schwa. It's but the difficulty with the schwa, I think it's I chalk it up to people not really knowing how where to use it rather than how to pronounce it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because it's a pretty simple. It's almost a non-sound, the schwa. But
So my
when it
favorite.
comes, but the like so many Slavic speakers, Ukrainian speakers would find it difficult to pronounce such simple words as the word word, for instance, the word world,
Mm-hmm.
the word earth, because that sound doesn't exist in Ukrainian,
Ah, the
and it doesn't really exist in so many other
That's
Slavic
true.
languages. So it's they would go like if you take the simple word bird, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
they basically how they get around it is
Mm-hmm.
they soften or palletize, if I'm using the correct
Mm-hmm.
technical term, the consonant. Like they instead of b, they
Mm-hmm.
say b, and then they go
Oh,
straight
bird.
into o. So they got bird, bird. So it's basically messing up the consonant and then saying o instead of because doesn't exist in Ukrainian or Russian or so many other Slavic languages.
Bird. Yeah, that's what
So
I would do
is
as well.
yeah,
Interesting.
but so that's what it's like. It's a workaround simply because
Mm-hmm.
people struggle with this
Mm-hmm.
seemingly simple sound, and they go instead of saying bird, a bird, they go bird, b or
Bird. 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 Bird.
yeah. But when you
Interesting.
are pronouncing because you're a native English speaker,
Bird.
you don't really think about it because it's the sound or but you do not pelletize if I'm using the correct technical term then again. So forgive me if I'm not. So but the b stays hard. B bird instead of but the average Ukrainian Russian speaker would go b ord with the or sound because the sound simply doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that would be one
Interesting.
example.
Right, exactly. And so you could theoretically go, okay, so let's look at the O, yeah, and let's look at the and let's notice how our mouth moves, where the sounds go. Yeah, I think say the mouth is a bit more open and the sound is a bit more in the back. Bird. Yeah, good. Susan is saying ship or sheep. Yeah, is that for Germans?
That's for actually for
For the
Ukrainians,
Slavs?
Russians, and Southern Europeans.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Although the Ukrainian does allow you to do sheep, for sure. Uh, but
Yeah, I
again,
mean,
like it's what do you
I
mm-hmm,
teach to Ukrainians, and these are the
mm-hmm,
three
mm-hmm,
things that I always have to pick them up on. It's ship,
mm-hmm,
sheep, this, these,
mm-hmm.
and foot, food. So when they say uh, they want to say foot, but they say
Mm-hmm,
food,
mm-hmm,
so they make
mm-hmm,
the vowel too long.
mm-hmm,
If I may intervene on
mm-hmm.
this, I think
Yes.
it's then again the example that I gave, I think is a genuine example of a sound that doesn't exist at all in the language, as opposed to foot versus food, for instance. Those are two different. People have to learn that they think that because it is spelled the same, it is
Foot.
the same sound. And you have to teach them that guys, when you see this double O, it is not the same sound, two different sounds. And when you've taught them that, then they can distinguish or even try to pronounce those two words, foot and food, for instance. I may be exaggerating a bit. Those two words to sound differently because they have those two different distinct sounds. But I think I would it's more of a technical challenge to not technical, a teaching challenge to teach them guys those two words. Remember, they have different sounds because they spelt with the same double O doesn't mean it is the same sound.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to the case of the which doesn't exist. However you teach it, it doesn't exist in the language.
But I don't think foot. I don't think there's an in Ukrainian either. Foot. I don't think
Yeah, but it's
there's
not.
a
It's well,
foot.
as a Ukrainian speaker yourself, it's not so difficult to pronounce it.
Mut,
Foot like
put, put, put.
as opposed to
Interesting.
the sound. The sound. Look, I think that those fellow Ukrainians on this call will agree with me that that one actually
Okay.
doesn't lend itself to being well. It's indeed genuinely difficult because the sound doesn't exist in any shape or form in either Ukrainian or Russian or so many other Slavic languages.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so next time I'm gonna see if I can give you a homework assignment to kind of become a bit more comfortable with the vowel chart. My assumption is that a solid theoretical foundation in this should allow you to explain this better to other people and to yourself when you choose to learn another language. What do you mean by my own examples? What are you trying to? What is your question?
Yeah, so you asked us what we recognize, like what we think
Oh,
would
yeah.
be difficult in English. So if
Hmm.
you have your own examples, I would
Yeah.
be
So my
very
favorite
happy.
sound to teach Ukrainians is ah. This is something that Ukrainians have a huge trouble with. Also among interpreters, the ah sound, this kind of round, this back ah round. Is it round or on or ah? It's rounded back open sound. Ah is very difficult for Ukrainian speakers because it's not an ah, it's not an it's like a ah, and I have
Like in
spent
what
countless
word,
hours
Mish?
like mad,
Mm.
manage. Yeah, Ukrainians would say med instead of mad, manage instead of manage. So it's the opening, and here is like the key is really showing how open it is, right? So, and again, my assumption is that we can use very kind of adult ways of explaining this. Yes, Elena.
I have a question. That's interesting because I think in British English it's mad, or it would be much softer than an American one.
I have no idea.
It
Yeah,
varies.
that's
I
It
don't
varies.
that's
It
correct.
varies
That's
very
correct.
wildly. If you go, for instance, in Scotland, it's almost an R sound, man. So it
Hmm.
depends because well, in British English is a very rich term in and of itself. It has so many different accents that you can like for instance in the US it can be almost a diphthong, mad. So in some maybe in some I don't know
Oh
some
yeah,
say
it can be.
mad,
It's true. It's true.
mad.
It can
It's
be.
all those
Yeah,
mad people as opposed to mad people as you would say
it's
it in
true.
like in standard British English. So it's like it's a sound, but then again, I think that while I quite agree with Misha that it's a teaching challenge, it's not a pronunciation challenge because it's well
Yeah.
technically nothing prevents people from pronouncing any sound at all, but some uh, sounds simply uh, do not exist in the language, like
Hmm.
the ah sound, which only exists in Arabic and maybe some other Semitic language. Ah, it's actually a glottal whatever it is and people find it so difficult, but it's actually an actual sound.
Hmm. Exactly.
But it actually has varieties, as far as I know, in Arabic.
Hmm. And so we were almost done with vowels. Basically, vowels also
Yeah, actually, a
among
great
so mhm.
example of what I
Yes.
meant is how so many American speakers would say and and it's a
And
diphthong actually. And
it
I don't
does
know,
a
I
different.
I can't really place
And
it which parts of part which of the U.S. accent this is most correct characteristics. But it's like when you watch like Hollywood movies
hmm
that yeah
hmm
and that's
hmm
clearly not
hmm
and.
and okay. So yeah, exactly. Language is very diverse. Again, we are talking about we talk about the general American accent. There's also modern received pronunciation. Most linguistics books are written about one or those or both of those. But indeed, it is the variety is really wide. Vowels also have different length. Yeah, they can be short, like e, tuk, tuk, short, or long, and they can change depending on where they are in a sentence. So they are before certain kind of consonants, they can be longer or shorter, right? So map and man have a different length. If you listen, map and man, which is longer, man or map? Man, map. I can't hear you, Sophie.
Man,
Man is
man
longer, right?
is longer
Exactly,
than
exactly, exactly. So this is an example of what is called prefortis clipping, which is the idea that if a consonant ends with a voiceless if a syllable ends with a voiceless consonant, also known as a fortis, then the vowel is clipped, made shorter. Yeah. So English does that as well, something to keep in mind. And of course, sometimes we have diphthongs or triphthongs, which is probably a word with the most one, two, three, four, only four consonants in a row. I guess it's not too many. Meat and steak. Which one of these is a diphthong, Rika?
Meat and steak.
Rika, one of these is a diphthong. One of these is not a diphthong. Which is which?
I would say, oh no, what a question is that? I think meat there, it's a diphthong, or should I just leave right away?
No, no, it's
Um,
okay. I mean, which is
it's
English spelling
I
is terribly confusing. You're not right. You're
Yes, and I think
on
it's
to
very confusing that you have if they're not diphthongs, then at least they are placed side by side, and then as English learners, I think it's very difficult in Denmark to pronounce that for people. That would be my first one on top of the list is
okay. But if
all
you
the differences.
but if you listen to me pronounce them, tell me one of
Yes,
them is two sounds and one of them is one.
yeah,
Meat and steak.
yeah.
Meat,
So
steak.
meat is one sound, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a
Exactly.
diphthong, and then steak. Of course, you have the
Other way around. So
steak.
meat
It
is a
is.
monophthong.
Okay.
It's just
Yeah.
one. It's an E. It's
Oh,
cardinal
yes.
vowel one.
Got it. Got it. Got it.
Right.
Got it. Yes.
And then steak is A, yeah. And the
Yeah.
E is more prominent. A, steak. Yeah. Good. So
Yes.
it's this one actually. It's this little, you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
visualize like this A and a little, yeah, A, short little.
A. Yeah.
Exactly. Good. Okay. And then of course this all changes. Like you have sounds like, can somebody read this phrase, please? Somebody read
May
this
I
out
try?
loud. Yeah, of course.
Would you, could you, in the
Mhm.
rain?
Perfect. So it goes, would you? So d and y smack crash into each other, becoming a j. Would you? Could you? In the rain or in the. So there's a lot of like change in English when consonants and vowels and everything collides, everything changes. It's called connected speech, which is a whole world of change in language. But that's it for consonants. Any questions? Oh, sorry, about for vowels. Any questions about this? Okay, good. And we're going to take a few more minutes to talk a little bit about consonants, and then I'm going to ask you some questions. So basically, we have this is kind of the schematics of your mouth, what we look like. So this is the glottis. The thing above it is the epiglottis. And then this is the pharynx, also known for the word pharyngitis, when you have an inflammation of the throat, pharyngitis, right? Then this little boxing, what do you call this thing you box into? Boxing, what's the word? Oh, punching bag kind of thing. This little punching bag. Are you aware of this punching bag in the back of your mouth? This little kind of thing. That's your uvula. Your
Mhm.
uvula. Yeah. Then you have the hard palate. You can really feel it with your tongue. This like really bony part of the roof of your
Mhm.
mouth. And then after it is the kind of between the hard palate. Sorry, oh, hold on, where am I? Right. We have the hard palate, and then we have kind of the teeth, and between the hard palate and the teeth is the alveolar ridge. That's it. So it goes from the teeth to the alveolar ridge and down to the hard palate and the uvula, and then the soft palate at the very back. And this is kind of everywhere the tongue can go. And when I say tongue, I don't mean the tip of your tongue. I mean the parts further in the back. It's an important distinction to make that when we talk about articulation, about those parts. Just the tongue is very flexible. And ultimately, this is where we get the consonant part of the IPA chart, right? So we have sounds that are bilabial. Can somebody pronounce? These are very common. This is a b, a b, two lips, b, m, right? And then in English, we don't really have it. I don't think we have any labiodentals, but we have a lot of dental sounds produced with the teeth, yeah, like t and d and n and r, yeah. Then we go move up, the tongue moves up to alveolar, post-alveolar, and then goes to palate. And basically, if you follow the IPA chart, you follow the roof of your mouth down to the back. It's really front, like it's not a random system, right? If you think about it, the chart is not arranged in a random manner. It's very logical. It goes front to back, yeah, from the lips all the way back to the glottis, yeah. Does anybody know an example? Can someone give me an example of a glottal stop in English? Very common British.
Bottle of water.
Bottle of water. Exactly. Bottle of
Bottle of
water. You
water.
just stop. Yeah, just stop. Yeah. You can also feel a glottal stop if you just say ah, this first moment of friction before you say the vowel. That's also a glottal stop. Ah, this little. Good. Okay. Any questions about this? Okay. So, thank you for paying attention. I know it's a lot of material. And now I want to ask you, I think most of us here are practicing interpreters, except for Susan, who is an interpretation trainer. So I guess we're all in a very similar boat. Can this be useful to what you do? And what would be useful in helping you do what you do? Can this knowledge help you in your work? And what kind of knowledge would help you in your work?
I would like to improve my English pronunciation in general, but I don't know where to start.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. I'm going to respond to these. Okay, good. Somebody else? I'm writing these things down. We'll talk about these.
I think from my humble practical experience in the booth of now over 30 years, I think what really matters
Mm-hmm.
is in particular when you're interpreting into a foreign language, whatever it may be, English in this case, is to learn to the basic pronunciation rules, and you don't have to, well, as some people sometimes fall into the trap of doing, is not, you don't have to try and reproduce a native accent.
Mm-hmm.
But what
Mm-hmm.
you need to really learn is that you need to uh, really get a good enough understanding, a knack of speaking distinctly, so that you don't you so that your interpretation is not confusing. Sometimes even overkilling it, like uh, like the difference between bad and bed. In
Mm-hmm.
some English accents, as we know, that distinction is not as obvious, but it can go as far as bid, for instance, bid in the Kiwi accent. It actually moves from e to I, and that is something that should be avoided too. So basically, the practical takeaway is to learn to speak distinctly, to make sure that you learn to articulate each sound distinctly enough from all other sounds, so that whenever, even if you're speaking with a characteristic foreign accent, but your audience can understand you.
Yes, exactly. So I really like, yeah, so you don't need to sound native, you just need to not confuse people. And this is
Exactly,
exactly
and
where,
in particular,
Mm.
should pay very close attention um, to words that, well, if you mispronounce them, it can change the
hmm.
meaning
Exactly,
of what it
exactly.
is you're interpreting. That is the most practical takeaway
Yes,
and skill to learn from where I
exactly,
sit.
exactly, exactly. Yes, Erika?
Yes, to your question, when interpreting at multi linguistic meetings, and most meetings are, of course, and a lot of speakers they prefer to speak English, even though they could also just speak their native tongue, because there are interpreters. Then it can sometimes be a challenge. Of course, you get used to the speakers if they take the floor more times. in a meeting, but sometimes it can be quite difficult because, of course, the sounds are not always produced as you are used to when you're watching BBC or any program or listening to standard English. What is standard English? I don't know. It's so globis nowadays. So I really think that maybe it would be useful for me at least to get a little bit more knowledge of maybe some of the non-native speakers. Maybe I'm not going to say from where, because it really depends. So I don't have one specific but country in mind. But yes, maybe some hints what we talked about before. You asked any English vowels that are difficult to pronounce in your languages, and that was a question that I really liked. Yeah.
So you're saying, okay, so you're saying you're experiencing issues in like understanding certain speakers from certain parts of the world. One
Yes.
thing I think, unfortunately, I don't really think there's anything outside of exposure you
No.
can do, but like Susan says, you can listen to podcasts, and there is a book by Michael Swan called Learner's English. If you remind me, I can send it to you. It outlines key problems that speakers of different languages have.
That's good.
It can be a good introduction
Yes.
to this thing. But unfortunately, I really feel like it's just exposure.
Yeah. No, but
So your
yes,
brain is.
it's
It's
exposure,
Michael
but there can
Swan's
always
Learner
be
English.
one new. There can always, well, yes, you're right, but not, for example, not one Dane is the same. I said we are not equal, so I can have some challenges with the English, and then my colleague would have another, or my
Yes.
friend would have another
Yes.
third.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
but yes, there might be some similarities
And
at least. So yes, Michael Swan's
and
Learner's
and
English.
I guess
Yeah.
just off the top of my head, I would also assume that you can take it in a different direction and maybe try to work more on like your capacity to predict speech and infer from
Yeah.
context. But
Of
I assume as
course.
an interpreter, you're probably quite advanced in that as it is. So
Yeah.
uh, perhaps. Okay, good. Somebody else?
So that was not accepted, I can hear.
Sorry?
So my suggestion was not really accepted.
Well,
I don't think it falls within the
quite
scope of what
quite the
I'm doing.
contrary.
I
If
can't.
I may be permitted to chime in
Yeah,
on
yeah, of
this,
course. Yeah, of
it's
course.
actually you raised a very good point. Let me elaborate. So I would also encourage interpreters to learn the boundaries or peculiar features of certain other languages, because we often get to interpret people, non-native speakers of English, speaking English. And it is important to bear in mind that certain languages, let's take Spanish. In Spanish, it is impossible to pronounce a word that begins with two consonants. Like a Spanish speaker simply cannot pronounce the word stop. They would go stop, estándar. They always add this in front. And if if you don't know about this, you can misunderstand what the person is saying with this because it's not supposed to be there, but they cannot help it. Like Swedes don't have the sound j; they would go y, for instance, as far as I know. I recall one funny episode. I was once working in the booth with a partner, and it was about something highly technical about radio frequencies, that sort of thing. And most of the speakers were French, and no offense meant, but whenever they come across a word that looks similar, they tend to pronounce it the way they do in French. So, and when you would hear things like fréquency range, fréquency band, and he was like, he doesn't know a word of French. He thought it was some kind of bond. No. I said it was frequency band, frequency range. But simply because those are French speakers, they maybe many of them just didn't even realize that they were pronouncing it how they would in French, but it was not being properly understood on the receiving end. So many like languages have those peculiarities, and how you when you come across, then again, a Spanish speaker or a French speaker or a Korean speaker, confusing between b and p. So in order to do a good job, because it's it's more common than not than than at the conference, most speakers deliver their speeches in English, and then you get to interpret, like sometimes okay, and but native speakers are few and far between now, but in particular in the European context, and you have to learn how the speakers of various other European languages could mess up a word or a sound.
Fair point. Okay. Thank you. So these are all considerations. Wonderful. Anybody else? Again, was this helpful to what you do, and what part of this can be helpful to what you do? Olivia?
Hi everybody. Thank you, Micha, first of all, for opening this up to everybody. I just wanted to let you know that for me, for instance, this is super useful. As Vadim was saying, I'm a speaker of Spanish and I make a bunch of mistakes still, even though I've been for years living in Canada, in learning how to articulate and how to place the tongue, at the right space is super useful, because when I'm interpreting, like all of us, many balls are in the air. I'm trying this balance of efforts, and the first thing that goes out the window is pronunciation. So trying to, I think for me, it would help a lot identify patterns. I think I have already several sounds that I know I need to pay attention to, but try to, I don't know how, try to work on them, on the side, so that when I'm in front of the mic, those things happen more naturally. But again, because I did not learn as a really young kid to pronounce like that, it was when I became an adult. It's really hard to remember that, yes, this is round, this is in the back, this is open, this is closed. So I think I just need to train, and to train through exercises, through identification of patterns of sounds, so that I can embed it. So that when I am finally interpreting, that can sort of go to the very background. Because right now I'm actually having it super in mind, maybe too much, because I am a perfectionist and I try to,
yes, of course.
not only not confuse my listener, but to sound as native as possible, which in English, as I see, is crazy, because there are many different pronunciations, and being in Canada adds another layer, I think, of complexity, because we are halfway British, halfway, Americans. and it's just there is no one Canadian accent, even like in the country, right? So anyway, that's what I wanted to say, and thank you again, Misha, for being
Thank
so
you. So I'm gonna answer I'm gonna respond to you with Sophie at the very end of this. Anybody else? Was this helpful, and what else would be helpful within the realm of sound, pronunciation, intonation as well, all these things? Larissa, is there anything perhaps that you found helpful here, or perhaps some things that you would find helpful if there's something if you had a wish list
Yes,
from these kind of
because
disciplines?
I think it can help us reduce our cognitive load while interpreting. For example, more automatic our phonetic decoding is, the more working memory we have for interpretation. So, yeah, and especially when we work with Ukrainian, Belarusian, Russian, it's especially relevant because vowel systems are of those languages are completely different. Stress rules. Sometimes I really struggle with stress in English, where I put it, because in Slavic languages it's mobile. And also, I think what is useful to include in the course, maybe how to handle proper names pronunciation, because for me it's really problem, like when I need to like name of a city or of a like famous person. Sometimes I Greek mythology or whatever. So it's sometimes it can be really yeah different, and also maybe the difference between long and short sound, like we sheep. That this it's a real difficulty for me. Yeah, and I think it can really reduce our cognitive load during interpretation. So all about intonation, prosody, phonetics is very, very useful for interpreters, I think.
Wonderful. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Vadim.
Yes, if I could add to that, this is a great
Yes.
point. In fact, look, it's not it's indeed we often come across uh, proper names or people's names that come from other countries, and in particular if they use the Latin alphabet, but they how they spell them, how they write them, it can be widely different from English. Like take the example of the recently elected, well, or appointed, elected, in fact, Prime Minister of Hungary. If you
Yeah,
if
he's
you if
not
you remember
Magyar.
how it is
He's
spelled,
Magyar. Magyar. Yeah,
Magyar.
true.
Peter, it's like Magyar, whatever, Magyar, whatever. But actually, it's funny that the letter G uh, is pronounced D with a D sound, and the letter A is pronounced as O unless it is accentuated. So
Really?
how it sounds, yeah, it sounds Modia,
Oh, I
Modia.
had no idea. I
That's
had no
that's what
idea.
his name sounds like. And well, you don't have to. Well, you can feel free to mess it up because you don't. Yeah, we are not
Wow.
supposed
Wow.
to know how each language spells. But
Mm-hmm.
it's actually an exciting area to explore, and in order to pronounce uh, those names correctly, or at least not to mess them up too badly.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I was listening to a podcast about the Unabomber recently, and his name is in Polish. We'd say his name is Ted Kaczynski, just like the
Mhm.
president of Poland and his brother. He's president and his brother. But in English, his name is Ted Kaczynski, which to me
Kaczynski.
makes no sense. I'm really confused. But his name is Kaczynski in English. Good. Okay. So, to pick up on what Sophie and Olivia said about accents and what to improve, I think Vadim is completely correct that you need to start with problems that trip up your speaker or your listeners, right? So I think we're all perfectionists in this field. I think there's very few interpreters that are not perfect. I'm yet to meet one who's not a perfectionist. And I think we all want to sound as fluent as possible and as native as possible. I think it's super normal because we want to get better at what we do. I have the same thing in all languages. Right now I'm really trying to improve my Polish to the point that I have no accent. But I'm very realistic about my prospects. I don't think it's highly likely. Maybe it is for me, or maybe not. I don't. We're gonna find out. But the point is that I think it's important to understand what is essential and what is not. I think it is essential that your speech is easy to listen to and understand for the listener. I think on a purely phonetic level, there are indeed words that perhaps you do mispronounce that do cause confusion. And I would recommend recording yourself and seeing if you can catch something like that. I think what can be a huge boon to your interpretation is intonation, and we will talk about that maybe next time or in a few time, the following time, which is how English handles stress, which is very different from how Spanish handle stress. So Spanish is a syllable timed language. I think you know this, right? So every syllable has the same length. English is a stress timed language. So there's a stressed syllable and then everything around is really, really compressed, right? So man and management or manageability or unmanageability are pronounced in pretty much in a very similar amount of time, even though in Spanish would be unmanageability. In English, it's all because there's one stress syllable. And I think my experience is that using intonation as a tool to communicate meaning can also be very powerful, also for you, right? Because when you understand that you are stressing what is important, I think you also feel better because you know your listener will have an easier time. I do think it is possible that our accents, if people are not used to our accents, can indeed pose difficulty for our listeners. It's not an unreasonable assumption to make. If other people's accents can create difficulties for us in decoding the accents, then the opposite can be imagined. So I would assume that our task is to do everything we can to make it easier, and sentence stress and proper intonation use can very much be a tool to mitigate this, right? To make sure that, okay, maybe I have a bit of an accent. Maybe it's a bit difficult. You're not used to the way I speak. Okay, but the way I stress things makes it very clear what is important in a sentence. That sounds very natural. And it's so much easier to do because this doesn't involve muscle memory, right? The reason we have accents is because unfortunately we're all old, and by old I mean older than the age of 12 or something. So it's really difficult for us to our muscles are kind of stuck in a way. We can't really train them as much. Most of us can't. So this is why we have accents. With intonation, it's just the larynx, like it's just good pitch. It goes up and down. You pronounce something louder, you pronounce something quieter. It's very simple. It's just about understanding this, right? So we will definitely talk about this. And I think that's really most of what I would assume you'd need to do because otherwise you're playing whack-a-mole. I'm just assuming. And this is like really what most language learners struggle with. I think Slavoj Žižek is a fantastic example of a very competent English speaker with an atrocious accent. Yeah, because he talks like this. He has the strongest Slavic speaker accent ever imaginable, and he's an outstanding public intellectual. You know, he has maybe some weird ideas, but he's very entertaining to listen to because the way he talks and the intonation is very, very nice. You know, so it's these things, right? You can't. I mean, I'm sure you've struggled with your accents and you've tried to fix it, and perhaps it can get a little bit better. But if you approach it from a different angle, yeah, from the angle of prosody and intonation and stress and using intonation as a meaning-making tool, then I think you can get very far because this is the road less traveled. I don't assume you've applied much effort in that sphere, and you can go way farther. Just a couple simple tweaks. And thank you guys for sharing this. This really helps me understand how to structure these better. Any questions? Okay. Wonderful. Okay, thank you. If you liked this session, I am going to leave my payment details in the chat. You can pay me with PayPal or an IBAN transfer account. 50% of this money will be sent to charity. 50% of this money will be sent to me. So it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win-win. Any questions?
What's coming up?
Right. So next week same time, we will continue the topic of sound. I think I want to be ambitious and tackle intonation and prosody to make it practical. I assume, raise your hand if you want more practical things as opposed to more theoretical things. Okay, so there's a consensus that we want less linguistics and we want more practice. Okay, so we will do a bit of linguistics because I really like that part. But okay, so next week we'll do something very practical with intonation. I'm also available for one-to-one sessions if you feel like that is within your realm of interest. And yeah, if I'm an interpreter, if you need to train me in interpretation, I'm almost here. Okay, thank you guys so much. Any last words before we wrap up? No.
Just
Okay.
words of gratitude. Thank you, Misha.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you.
Loving it.
Okay, wonderful. So, I'm going to, is everybody in the WhatsApp group? Raise your hand if you're not in the WhatsApp group. Okay, wonderful. I'm just going to leave my details there. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to leave them in the chat. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you next week. Goodbye. Thank you. Bye-bye.